When World War II ended in 1945, much of the world lay in ruins. Cities like Berlin, Warsaw, Tokyo, and London were reduced to rubble. Millions were dead, economies were shattered, and old empires had collapsed. But across the Atlantic, one nation stood not only untouched by the devastation, it stood stronger than ever before. That nation was the United States of America. In just a few short years, the US had gone from a country hesitant to join foreign wars to the most powerful nation the world had ever seen. But how did that happen? How did a country once struggling through the Great Depression suddenly emerge as a global superpower that shaped the modern world? The story begins in the dark days of the 1930s. America was inward-looking, focused on surviving the economic collapse. The Great Depression had left 1 in 4 Americans jobless. The government was struggling to rebuild the economy, and the idea of foreign entanglements was deeply unpopular. But when World War II broke out in 1939, everything began to change. At first, the United States stayed neutral, supplying weapons and materials to the Allies through programs like Lend-Lease. But America's factories roared back to life. Industries that had been quiet for years now produced ships, tanks, planes, and ammunition at a speed no other nation could match. This industrial boom not only revived the economy, it turned the US into the arsenal of democracy. Then came December 7, 1941, the day Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. In that single moment, the sleeping giant woke up. The US entered the war, and within months, its entire society transformed into a war machine. Men enlisted by the millions. Women entered the workforce, and factories worked around the clock. The US built over 300,000 planes, 100,000 tanks, and thousands of warships in just a few years. While Europe and Asia were bombed into dust, the American mainland was untouched. Instead, its industries expanded, its economy flourished, and its scientific research accelerated. The Manhattan Project, hidden in secret laboratories, developed the atomic bomb, a weapon so powerful it would not only end the war but redefine global politics forever. By the time Japan surrendered in 1945, the US had half the world's industrial output and held 2/3 of the world's gold reserves. The American dollar became the center of the new global economy. The US wasn't just a winner, it was the architect of the New World Order. But being a superpower wasn't just about money or weapons, it was about vision. In 1945, American leaders gathered with their allies to shape a new international system, one designed to prevent another world war. The United Nations was founded in San Francisco. The International Monetary Fund and World Bank were created to stabilize global trade. The Marshall Plan poured billions of dollars into rebuilding Europe, not just out of charity, but to prevent the spread of communism and secure new markets for American goods. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union, the only other major power left standing, had its own ambitions. It controlled much of Eastern Europe, spreading communist ideology across half the globe. And so began a new kind of conflict, not fought on battlefields, but in ideology, espionage, and influence. The Cold War. The US responded with strategy and strength. NATO was formed in 1949, binding America to the defense of Western Europe. American troops were stationed in Germany, Japan, and South Korea. The US military became global, its presence felt on every continent. Hollywood spread American culture. Jazz and Coca-Cola became symbols of freedom. By the 1950s, the US had developed nuclear weapons, jet aircraft, and intercontinental missiles. It led the race into space, and later, to the moon. But perhaps its greatest power was not in its bombs or rockets, it was in its ability to inspire, to represent democracy, capitalism, and the idea that anyone, anywhere, could rise through hard work and freedom. Yet, America's rise wasn't without challenges. The Vietnam War tested its might. The Civil Rights Movement tested its soul. Economic crises and political scandals exposed its flaws. But through every test, the country adapted, redefined itself, and continued to lead. By the end of the 20th century, the Soviet Union had collapsed. The Berlin Wall had fallen. The Cold War was over. And for the first time in history, one nation stood alone, unmatched in military power, economic influence, and global reach. The United States had become not just a superpower, but the superpower. It had achieved what no empire in history ever had: dominance without direct conquest, influence without colonization. Its weapons could reach anywhere, its culture could inspire anyone, and its economy connected everyone. From the ashes of war, through innovation, strategy, and vision, the United States of America built something extraordinary, a world shaped in its image. And that is how a nation born from rebellion, once isolated and uncertain, became the most powerful force the modern world has ever known.